You are standing in the kitchen at someone else's house, holding a paper cup that is already warm in your hand, listening to a conversation you were never really part of. Someone asks how work is going, and you say busy without thinking about it, the way you always say busy, because busy sounds like control, and control sounds like you were doing fine. They nod, satisfied, and turn to someone else. The conversation moves on without you, the way it always does. You take a sip of something you did not want, feel the tightness in your chest you cannot quite name, and tell yourself you were just tired. Not sad, not lonely, just tired. And if you are part of Generation X, there is a good chance you have spent most of your life calling that feeling independence. This video is about the psychology behind that feeling, not the version people talk about when they say your generation learned to take care of itself. The other version. The one that formed before you even knew what emotional independence was. The one your brain wired itself around when you were still young enough to think being alone was normal. Because the part that makes Gen X emotional independence so hard to explain is that it does not feel like a defense. It feels like personality. If you have ever been the person everyone calls reliable, but nobody calls when they are scared, this hits harder than you think. If you have ever handled something painful without telling anyone, and then felt irritated when people asked why you did not say anything, you are the kind of person this was written for. If you grew up learning how to stay quiet in a loud house, or how to stay out of the way in a busy one, or how to figure things out without asking because asking did not go well, you have probably never said this out loud, but part of you stopped expecting emotional help before you even knew you were allowed to want it. On the surface, it looks like strength. Underneath, it feels like distance. Layer 1 is the behavior everyone sees. You answer your own problems. You fix things before anyone notices they are broken. You listen more than you talk. When something goes wrong, your first instinct is not who can help me, it is how do I handle this without making it a big deal. You sit in your car after work longer than you need to, staring at the dashboard, not because anything dramatic happened, but because the thought of walking inside and having to explain how your day felt sounds exhausting. You scroll your phone, not really reading anything, just letting time pass until you feel neutral enough to go in. From the outside, this looks like composure. From the inside, it feels like pressure you never learned to release. Psychologically, this is classic self-regulation learned early. When a child realizes that strong feelings do not get much response, the nervous system adapts. It learns to settle itself. It learns to stay quiet. It learns that needing less keeps things smoother. The brain calls that safety. And the recognition that hits people here is usually simple. You do not think of yourself as someone who does not need people. You think of yourself as someone who should not need people. What makes that pattern harder to break is not the habit itself. It is the emotional logic underneath it. Layer 2 is where the logic starts to show. You tell yourself you are low maintenance. You say you do not like drama. You say you prefer to handle things on your own. And all of that is true. But there is another feeling sitting underneath those words, and it shows up in small moments. Someone offers help and you say no too quickly. Someone asks how you are doing and you give the short version even when you want to say more. Someone gets close to understanding you and you change the subject without realizing why. Inside, the feeling is not pride. It is tension. Your body reacts to emotional attention the way other people react to conflict. Your shoulders tighten, your stomach pulls in, your brain starts looking for a way to end the moment without hurting anyone or exposing anything. This is not because you do not have feelings. It is because your system learned early that strong feelings were something you handled privately. Attachment psychology calls this avoidant adaptation, but that word makes it sound like a choice. For most Gen X kids, it was not a choice. It was the environment. Parents working long hours, adults distracted, homes where nobody asked how you felt because everyone assumed you were fine if you were not making noise. So the brain makes a simple rule. Stay calm, stay useful, stay out of the way. You will be safer there. And what that rule slowly turns into, without you noticing, is emotional independence that feels automatic, which leads to something most people never connect to their childhood at all: the way you choose when to let people get close. And the part about that is harder to sit with than the independence itself. Some people watching this have never told anyone about the moment they realized they do not actually know how to ask for comfort without feeling weak. Layer 3 is where the original adaptation lives. Picture being 10 years old and realizing that nobody is coming to check if you are okay. Not because they do not care, because everyone is busy, because that was the culture, because independence was expected earlier than anyone said out loud. You get hurt and you walk it off. You get upset and you go to your room. You get confused and you figure it out yourself. Nothing dramatic, nothing abusive, just consistent emotional space where you learn to fill the gap on your own. The nervous system does not forget that. When a child learns that support is unpredictable, the brain stops waiting for it. It starts building self-reliance not as confidence, but as insurance. If I can handle it myself, I never have to feel the moment when nobody shows up. That moment becomes the one feeling your system tries hardest to avoid. And you see it now in ways that do not look connected at all. You stay in control during arguments, but afterward, you feel strangely alone. You listen to other people's problems easily, but when it is your turn to talk, the words feel heavy in your mouth. You can be surrounded by people who care about you and still feel like you are managing everything by yourself. The internal texture of that feeling is specific. It is not panic. It is not sadness. It is a quiet tightening in your chest, like your body is preparing to hold something without help. That is not personality. That is a nervous system that learned early that needing less kept things stable. And the twist most people miss is this: emotional independence does not always come from strength. Sometimes it comes from getting used to being alone before you were ready. Which leads to the part most Gen X adults do not like looking at: the cost. Layer 4 is where the pattern shows up in your life right now. You are in a relationship with someone who wants to talk things through, and you can feel yourself pulling back even when you know the conversation matters. You tell yourself you just need time to think, but what you really need is space to calm the part of your brain that thinks closeness means losing control. You cancel plans you were actually looking forward to and feel relief that scares you a little. You stay strong for everyone else, and then, late at night, you sit on the edge of the bed feeling something you cannot explain, like you are carrying weight nobody else can see. Not because nobody would help, because part of you never learned how to let them. Here is where the reframe starts to happen, and most people do not notice it at first. What if the independence you are proud of is not the thing that made your life harder? What if it is the thing that protected you from realizing how early you felt alone? If that sounds uncomfortable, it is supposed to, because once you see that, another pattern starts to make sense. The way you sometimes feel irritated when people need too much from you. The way you feel suspicious of emotional intensity. The way you respect people who handle their own problems more than people who ask for help. That is not judgment. That is recognition. Your brain trusts what feels familiar. And for a lot of Gen X kids, what felt familiar was figuring things out without anyone stepping in. So when someone leans on you emotionally, part of your system does not relax. It braces. There are two kinds of people hearing this right now: the ones who feel exposed and the ones who feel nothing and are wondering why everyone else makes such a big deal about this. Layer 5 goes deeper than independence. It goes into repetition. The mind has a strange habit. It recreates emotional environments that feel like home even when home was distant. Not on purpose, not consciously, just quietly. You choose partners who respect your space and then feel hurt when they do not notice you pulling away. You take jobs where you are trusted to handle everything and then feel invisible when nobody checks on you. You become the person everyone relies on and then wonder why nobody thinks to take care of you. From the outside, it looks like coincidence. From the inside, it feels normal. Psychology calls this repetition compulsion, but the experience of it is simpler. Your brain keeps building situations where you do not have to need anyone, because needing anyone still feels risky in a place you cannot explain. The emotional texture here is subtle. It is the feeling of being capable and tired at the same time. The feeling of being respected and unseen in the same moment. The feeling of knowing you could ask for support, but not knowing how to do it without feeling like you were doing something wrong. And the part that makes this especially Gen X is that you were praised for it. You were called mature. You were called responsible. You were told you were easy. No one tells a kid to stop being easy, so the pattern stays. By the time you are an adult, emotional independence feels like who you are, not something you learned. Which makes the final question harder than it should be. When you think about the way you handle things now, the calm, the distance, the ability to keep going without asking for help, how much of that is the person you chose to become, and how much of it started the moment you realized nobody was coming and decided you would be fine anyway?